One day, as a freshman at Washington State College, now university, I was browsing through the magazine section of Holland Library and came across two magazines aimed at writers and would-be writers. It was at that moment I discovered there was such a thing as freelance writing. That's for me, I thought. I couldn't imagine an employer dumb enough to hire me, and I wouldn't want to work for somebody that dumb anyway. But here was a form of work where one could be his own boss. It never occurred to me that I would still be working for someone pretty dumb. From then on, I began writing features for magazines and newspapers. By the time I graduated from college, I had sold dozens of features. Typically, I was paid $25 for a piece, but there were lots of cheap publications around too. Still, I loved the work, regardless of the rate of pay. Eventually, I was hired by Eastern Washington State College of Education, now Eastern Washington University, as an instructor in journalism. I had summers off to devote my time entirely to freelancing. All of the stories I wrote in those early years were factual. Two of the factual articles are included in this collection and pretty much represent the high point of my article writing. Even though both are factual, I think the one thing that distinguishes them is that each has a touch of humor. One is Wildlife in a Room with a View, originally published by Sports Illustrated and later abridged by Reader's Digest. The other is $7,000 Television Extravaganza, published by TV Guide. During this period, I wrote every night for 2 hours, 7 nights a week, and I tried never to miss a writing session or to cut one short. One night, in the first hour of my 2-hour session, I finished an article on the use of telemetry in the study of wildlife, whereby wild animals are hooked up with radio transmitters so scientists can follow their travels at night. I finished writing the article in the first hour of my session and still had an hour to go. So, I decided to write a piece of nonsense to fill up my last hour. The idea for the piece was that eventually all animals will be equipped with radios, and this will simplify hunting a great deal. As was my practice at the time, anything I wrote I sent off to a magazine. This piece went to Field and Stream because it touched on hunting. One day I went out to the mailbox, and there was a small envelope from Field and Stream. Freelance writers tend to get excited over small envelopes as opposed to large envelopes. Large envelopes contain the rejected manuscript, and small envelopes contain checks. I ripped open the small envelope, and it contained a check for $350. Now, I had just sold a factual article for $750, but it had taken me a month to research and write. This piece of nonsense had taken me an hour. At that instant, I became a humor writer. Also included in this collection is my very first published fiction, The Lady Who Kept Things. I wrote it in a creative writing class, and it was later published in Spark, the student literary magazine at WSU. The instructor never thought much of my writing and refused to give me a grade higher than a B. We often had to read a story aloud to the class, and one day I read one of my humor pieces. The class laughed themselves sick. Even the instructor had to take off his glasses and wipe away tears of mirth. Back came the paper with a grade of B. I stormed into the professor's office and cried, "How could you give me a grade of B on this story when the class loved it, and even you had to wipe away tears?" He said, "Yes, McManus, it was a very funny story, but this is a class in the writing of serious literature, and you have to admit that story wasn't serious." I offer this as a word of warning to anyone interested in a career as a humor writer. Indeed, once I received a letter from an editor asking me to write for his magazine. "But not humor," he said. "It's too dangerous." Yeah, well, he should try writing it.